Hello creeps! Andy here, and today I finally have my reading wrap up for June. So here are all the books I read in June, and after this we are officially caught up on reading wrap-ups, and then we can move on to other videos. So the very first book that I read was The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This is about a family that owns a summer camp. Their house is on the same land that the summer camp is on. They had a son, and when he was younger, he disappeared into the woods, never to be seen again. And then however many years later, now their daughter has disappeared. So they're trying to figure out if it's connected to the past, if this is something new, if something was going on in the summer camp, because simultaneously the summer camp is running its camp during summer. Let's get into my notes here. So this one is definitely a slow start, and it's very character driven. The writing and the characters are, I think, the strengths of this novel. Thriller wise, it's really not anything different than a typical thriller book, you know? I mean, somebody goes missing in the woods, it happens all the time. But it definitely starts off slow. The irony also is not lost on me that this family keeps naming parts of their land after transcendentalists. Having extreme wealth and not really taking care of the town or the people around you, and then naming something Emerson is just quite ironic. There's a lot of themes as well in this book about wealth and reputation of these wealthy families, repressive nature of marriages in the 60s, the power imbalance between wealthy people and poor people, and also a bit of a middle finger to the rich, which I'm always here for. But it's also about childhood and friendship and learning who you are. And so there's a ton of different aspects to the story that I really enjoyed. I thought that one of the most interesting kind of comments throughout the story was how creating your own wealth and then being a product of wealth arbors two very different outcomes in people. So you have this family who's very privileged and has all the money and their needs have always been taken care of, and they're not good people, they're not great people. And then on the flip side of that, you have their ancestors and kind of how they began, how they made their wealth, how they bought the land, and how different those people's relationships were with the community, with people in general, with themselves, with nature, with life, how different their relationships were than the people who were born of wealth. And I found this one of the fascinating aspects of the story, and I really like that because I think nepotism and things like that are discussed in novels a lot. I haven't really seen a discussion between people who make wealth and people who are the product of that wealth. I really liked that part of the book. There's also, discussion of how money can change people, change relationships, and even cause problems, although it can eliminate a lot of problems. If you don't use that wealth responsibly, it can also create a lot of problems too. I don't think that this book, like I said, is really anything crazy in the thriller department, but I really enjoyed this one. I really liked the themes, and I felt like it was very expertly crafted. I liked that you had these kids in camp that are kind of coming of age, becoming themselves, finding their place in the world, and then trying to find some joy in the different lives that they have, because they all do come from wealthy backgrounds, but that does not mean that they were all raised with a great life. And so you have them kind of navigating that, and then you have this rich family who kind of uses their money and power to get out of anything, and then you have the daughter that goes missing, and that kind of starts this whole chain reaction to the story. So I really enjoyed this one. I was very impressed, like I said, by the way it was crafted. I couldn't really put that one down, and I was pretty impressed by it. Next, I read Decomposition Book by Sarah Van Oss. I told you guys that this was one of the ones that I was most excited for to come out this year. It felt like it was going to be pretty disturbing. I liked the synopsis in the back, and the cover really sold me. This one wasn't exactly as I thought, and definitely part of the issue is me, because I always want my books to be disturbing and gross. And so when there are quotes about this being like very unhinged and stuff, I think it's going to be pretty messed up. But this one is about a girl who's staying in the woods, recuperating from her experiences with friends and family and different things that happened to her. She finds a corpse of a woman, a hiker in the woods, and she almost befriends it. So it sounds like it's going to be pretty disturbing, but it felt very tame to me. And also, that's probably just because I read really messed up stuff, you know? That's no fault of the writers. And so I really love the premise. I love the cover. This is a debut author, which I found really interesting. And so like, yeah, an idea for a first book, I think it's really cool. The writing, however, just was not my favorite. And it took me a while to figure out why. And I think it's because it's very Gen Z. There's a lot of Gen Z slang and a lot of exclamation marks used that make the writing feel very young. And so reading it as someone who is not Gen Z, it was really hard to connect with the story, the character. And also I found it kind of annoying. I was just kind of putting myself in that position thinking, man, if this girl just comes and complains about her life to my dead corpse, and I'm like, bitch, I'm dead though. You can't have it worse than me. You know what I mean? I just found it the main character a little self-centered, and I couldn't connect with her because I just kind of disliked her because of that. Most of the story is really about what's going on in the main character's brain and the things that she's working through again. So maybe it's gonna be seen as selfish because it's all kind of seen through her eyes. I think my favorite part of the story was you go back and forth from our main character, and then you do get some past info on how the hikers ended up where they were, how they became sick, what happened, how they got lost, that kind of stuff. I think that was my favorite part of it, was following them around. I really liked that part of the story. And you know what else is so interesting is this always happens to me. These books, sure, they're about woods, but they don't have really any other similarities, but they take place in the same woods. That always happens where I pick two books and they have a common theme or a common place, something that I, didn't know before I picked it up. And then I'm reading it. I'm like, wait, this is the same place as the last book. That all being said, there are themes that I really liked about this book, aspects of exploring sexuality and your past traumas and things like that. But yeah, I just feel like maybe it's a bit for a younger generation. If you're a Gen Z, maybe you'll connect with the story a little bit more than I did. I'm not saying that's a bad book by any means. I just didn't really connect with it as much as I thought I was going to. Next up, I read The Bone Garden by Tess Gerritsen. I love everything that this woman has ever written. I really do. So this one is a dual timeline. Well, at least that's what it made it seem like. So you have a woman, she's gotten divorced and she's bought this first house all on her own. It's a fixer-upper, so she's slowly going through and figuring out what needs to change and how she can kind of make it her own. And so she decides to garden out back and she finds a dead body. Big bummer. So we go back in time to the 1830s in Boston. We get this whole story, this thriller murder mystery, trying to figure out who that corpse is in that lady's in modern day timeline in her backyard. This one talks a lot about the medical school and medical practices in the 1830s, grave robbers, crimes and punishments of the time, also the class divide and the divide between money status and even where someone was born. So I really liked the historical fiction aspect of it. This writer used to be a doctor, and so a lot of her books are medical thrillers, and this one's no different, but this one you get a little bit of historical fiction as well, which I really liked. I loved the story. And why I was questioning if it's a dual timeline, typically dual timelines you have kind of half and half. This one I would say is 80%, 85% in the past. And at first that threw me off a bit because I'm like, oh, I thought we were going back and forth. But I ended up really loving the story of the past, that it didn't bother me at all. It turned out to have some romance in there as well, which are not like her other books. And honestly, this definitely felt like something separate from her other work. It felt like something very different from her that I had never read before. And so I really liked it. I thought it was a very unique, especially the ending, very different from what she typically writes. I really like this one. There's some information too about these doctors. This is kind of gross. Well, it is. It's very gross. This was before germ theory. You had this doctor whose patients were all pregnant women and they kept dying, and he couldn't figure out why they kept dying. And so he would go in, there's this one scene where he goes in and just, shoves his hand up there, comes out bloody, pussy, and then just goes to the next girl. In retrospect, it seems so obvious, just wash your hands. But it is kind of crazy that that's where medicine began. I also mentioned in the other book that kind of morality between these people need to learn medicine. They need to dissect bodies. They need to know what the organs look like in the veins and everything. And so they're paying people to grave rob for them so they can do that. So it's not a great thing, but also it is a necessity of the time. So I also liked that aspect of it too. There's some really horrendous characters in here, and there's some really awesome characters. So really enjoyed this one. But it's Tess Gerritsen. I mean, are we surprised? Okay, next I read this one on Kindle Unlimited. This is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This is a quick little reimagining of the fall of the House of Usher. And you have this soldier, which I was a little bit confused by. In this story, it does state that all soldiers from this individual's town have their own pronoun. So they're not referred to as man or woman. And I just thought, okay, but in my head, I just thought it was a guy. In the second one, the main soldier says, I'm not a man. So then I'm like, oh shoot, the whole first one, I just thought it was a man. And the second one, I'm like, okay, maybe it's woman. And they do talk about binding, but also there's discussion of how male soldiers get treated better than female soldiers. So I wasn't quite sure if that was for the character or for them to fit in to feel comfortable and safe. And then in the third book, because there's 3 of these, someone refers to them as they. So I'm not sure if their pronouns are they. I don't know what I missed to make me confused by this. You guys let me know. I don't know if they go by they or if that's just the closest word to the pronoun that they use for all the soldiers. Do you get what I'm saying? So I'm not 100% sure. I will use they for them because that's the only pronoun that is used towards them. But in their language, priests have their own pronouns, and I think even rocks do. So it's not I don't feel like a very straightforward answer, but I also may have completely missed something. So the soldier gets a letter from their friend from childhood. They end up going there and learn that one of them is really sick, I mean like on death's door, and the other one, their brother and sister, the other one is falling ill as well. They end up meeting a mycologist, and she explains a lot about the fungi in the town and kind of just about the town in general. She talks about how the wildlife is acting kind of weird and the rabbits aren't running from people. They'll just kind of sit and stare you dead in the face. And so the people in town won't hunt them. They're kind of freaked out by them. And I thought it was funny because I just read The Caretaker. I'm like, huh, another rabbit, okay. And then I have a third book that I read this month that has something to do with rabbits. So I was like, what's up with all these rabbits? Okay, so they go to the House of Usher, and the house is kind of dilapidated. There's a lot of mold all over the walls. So I wrote, I really liked the mycology aspect of it and the fungi and the description of those sorts of things. It was good, but I think I actually liked the storytelling a little bit more in a different King T. Fisher book I read. Did I just say King T. Fisher? Something about a house. I can't even remember the title now. I think that there could have been some genuinely creepy scenes in this book that just really didn't feel as climactic as I would have liked. And I really think that there was some missed opportunity. I felt like I needed a little bit more. So it was fine. I didn't hate it or anything, but I liked it a little bit less than I thought that I would. Okay, next I read Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. This is one of my favorite books of the entire year. So this one we have a dual narrative. They're a married couple, 2 women. So one of them goes on this mission to the bottom of the ocean. She's supposed to be gone for a few weeks and ends up being gone for months. And when she returns, her wife is left picking up the pieces and trying to make peace with the fact that the woman that came home wasn't the woman who left. There seems to be a big change in her wife. The writing in this, absolutely beautiful. I loved the sections showing the different layers in the ocean. I thought that was pretty neat. And about halfway through, I wrote that this story to me feels like how our past kind of shapes us, whether it's childhood experiences or some traumatic event that we face as an adult. It felt to me like it was about the struggles of marriage, how you're always kind of trying to pin down a moving target, and how you have to wake up each day to choose to love that other person. I wrote at its core, it really felt like it was about how ever-changing and evolving marriage was. And I think there are some aspects of that in here, but I do think that the end of the story changed my thought process on how I viewed the story as a whole. It really did feel like an entire allegory. Unfortunately, it's one of those books where I can't really talk about why I loved it so much. You're just gonna have to trust me that I did love it. Doesn't mean you will, but I did. And I do think that there's elements in here of grief, like losing your mother. One of the women loses her mother, as well as even taking care of a sick significant other or relative. Some might find this a little bit slow, and it really is just kind of her life working and taking care of her wife and trying to figure out how to fix things, how to make them how they were. But I think that every page has meaning, and once you get to the end of the story, it's one of those where you can go back and kind of rethink what you read, and it almost has new meaning than what you just read. It's a really cool book. I absolutely love this one. It won't be for everyone. It is definitely a slower start, but if you're okay with something that's a little bit slower but I think has a big payoff at the end, I would highly suggest that one. Next, I read The Summer Fun Massacre. This is by Craig DeLuey. It looks like this, and this one, I feel like the title is a little bit misleading. The cover's maybe a little bit misleading. The back doesn't explicitly say that it's about a massacre at a summer camp, but I feel like that's what the title implies. So I do feel like this feels a little bit misleading, and I think that's why it has a little bit of lower ratings. I definitely thought I was getting one thing and got something completely different. You expect to see this massacre and this killer and, you know, have it be all bloody and gory, but really the massacre starts at the beginning of the book, so you miss everything. It's just a guy stumbles upon a massacre and you're like, oh, that was the okay. But more so it's about the sheriff. There was a murder in town years prior, and he actually ended up not being able to help the people there, so he has a lot of guilt that he carries with him. So when this happens and he misses it again now as the cop, he's not sheriff, he's a cop. I actually don't know the ranking. Deputy? I don't know. But anyway, he is a cop in town, and so because of his guilt that he's been carrying with him, he really tries to figure out what's going on with the town. You have these, you know, small town sheriffs that would do anything to cover up things for each other and don't always play by the rules. You have some folklore in there. You got, you know, creepy house in the woods to explore. There's some cool scenes in here that I really enjoyed. And I gotta say, it wasn't at all what I expected, but I read this in 2 days. I was intrigued by it. I wanted to know what was happening. There were some things that were fun, some scenes that I didn't expect at all, and definitely much different than I expected, but I still liked it. And also, I'm assuming during December, the second part comes out, the Yule Day Slaughter, which I will 100% be picking up because I love Christmas horror books. So yeah, I'm excited for that. Is this book perfect? No. Did I hate it? No. I actually had fun reading it, and if you want just a simple kind of summer slasher, but not, I guess summer slasher isn't maybe the best word because the massacre happens first. So it's not all that slashery, but if you want just a summer book, I don't know. I thought that this one was fun. I was intrigued by it. Also, this is another one that has rabbits in it. That's the third book that I've read in 2 months that had creepy rabbits, so I thought that was kind of interesting. Next up, I read this bad boy, Chlorine by Jade Song. So this one is kind of a coming of age about the different aspects of womanhood through the lens of a young girl who's obsessed with mermaids. And she's a swimmer, but most of the story really is, I get up, I go to the swim meet, I do this with my friend, I hang out with this boy. It's told very everyday life, you know? There's nothing too crazy that happens in most of the book. And honestly, I liked the concept, but I didn't fully connect with the writing of this one. And there's no particular reason. I really do like stories that, you know, are metaphors for other things. And I did like this one, but I just couldn't really get sucked into it the way that I like to when I'm reading. So yeah, there were things that I did like, but it wasn't my favorite read of the year. Next, I read What Feasts at Night. This is the second to that T. Kingfisher book, the other one that I read this month as well. This one is pretty different. So you have that same soldier, they go back to their own hometown and they have this little house in the woods, and I thought, ooh, house in the woods, this is gonna be creepy, this is gonna be spooky. And again, I was a little bit disappointed. I was really hoping that the Woods would almost become a character themselves, but it felt a little bit, again, short for me. This one's kind of about a ghost, I don't know, paralysis demon kind of thing. So it's not really a story that I would be into. Stories like that aren't really my jam. Not really a ghost story kind of gal. And this one, I truly didn't really feel like it just added much to the genre that was new or creepy or really that original. It was fine. You have folklore and woods, and I just expected it to be a lot creepier than it was. But again, I think it fell just a little short for me. Just not my favorite. Next, I read Lime Pie Perjury, my cozy mystery, where Lottie Lemon solves a murder. Don't even remember that because that was 2 books ago, so I have no idea. Next up, I read this bad boy, The Measure. Oh, this is by Nikki Ehrlich. This story is about one day, everyone in the world over the age of 22 receives a box on their doorstep. If you open the box, there's a string, and that string correlates with how long your life is. It doesn't determine the length of your life. Whether you look at the string or not, your life will be the same length, but it does tell you how long you have left to live. So you have individuals in the book who decide to look at their strings and people who don't. By the way, are you looking at your string? You gotta let me know. If a box shows up and you know what it is, are you looking at your string? Honestly, I asked a bunch of my friends and it was 50-50 and I was very surprised. I would not look at it. Anyway, okay, so there's some cool parts of this story, cool concept, right? Everyone is kind of connected, and if you pay close enough attention, you see different characters show up in different places, and you know, they're all connected. It's a beautiful sentiment. However, this one, there really wasn't much description, and I had a lot of trouble feeling any sort of emotion to these characters, especially with how high stakes the book is. I mean, it's literally life or death. You have people that find out that their friends and relatives have a year left, 6 months left, a day left to live, 10 years left to live, and, you know, make decisions accordingly dependent on that. And I just could not get into it. It's very, Hank said this, and Hank went here, and Hank is sad. It felt to me like the epitome of a show not tell type of book, and I don't particularly like those. And you don't really realize how much impact that this would have over your daily life, especially because the government gets involved and kind of messes with things as well. And you know, short stringers are treated differently than long stringers. The strings, I think, can be seen as a metaphor for anything that can divide humanity. Politics, religion, nationality, race, sexuality. It's just so silly that we use so many things to divide us when we're all living the same thing. And so I think it's a beautiful sentiment, and I do think it's a story that a lot of people do need to read for that reason. I also think that at its core, that it's simply about living life. Sorry, my camera turned off and now it only has 17% battery, so we're gonna have to race through this. Okay, what I was saying about this bad boy, I wrote that at its core, I think it's simply about living life. You never know what's gonna happen, where life's gonna take you. Again, I really liked the sentiment and the thought behind it. And also at the end, I just wrote, life's too damn short, do what you love who you love, find what makes you happy. And I think in that regard, it's a cool book. And I do think that there's a lot of people that have read this that it's really changed them in a way, or they found something that they really loved about it. I'm gonna put this one in my little library in my neighborhood because it wasn't for me, but I know that there are a lot of people who really love this book. And then the very last book that I read, well, this one I listened to on Audible. I don't know why I said that so weird. This was called This Summer Will Be Different. This was my book club with my friends, and I didn't think I would like this one because it is a romance book. And I know that I've told you guys before that I don't mind romance books when there's more than just doing it. And this one, there was a ton more. I actually ended up liking it a lot more than I thought. At first, the first scene I didn't know about. And I think this is why I don't like romance books. I get way too in my head and I don't like germs. Germs gross me out. So in the very first second of the book, this girl gets off a plane, goes to a restaurant, and sleeps with some guy, okay? So the whole time I'm just like, you just got off a plane? You're not even take a shower? You dirty bitch. And also she just ate oysters. I'm like, you're not gonna brush your teeth? You are nasty. Do not get in his bed. I don't even let my husband wear outside clothes on my couch, okay? I know that I have issues, But I could not get into it. I'm like, this is probably why I don't like romance books. The thought of just even kissing someone I don't know, grosses me out. Anyway, okay, so yeah, I wrote you gross. This book is about a lot more than that. So our main character, she sleeps with that guy, and then finds out that that guy is actually her friend's brother. Dun dun dun. So it's like a forbidden, you know, you're not supposed to be hooking up with my brother type of thing. So that's on Prince Edward Island, and then she lives somewhere, Toronto or something. And so through the years, they keep finding their ways back to each other and kind of hooking up and stuff behind her friend's back. And then eventually she thinks that she wants more with this guy. But it's so much more than just the romance aspect of this book. It's really about friendship and dreams and adulthood and about how life changes as you age. It's really about finding yourself and what you want out of life, what makes you happy. And I really thought it was a genuinely cute story. And it's the first romance book I've ever read. Hold on, let me do a scene from every romance book, okay?
Wow, you're really tall. What are you, like 6 foot?
6'4", actually.
Every romance book that I've read, I'm not joking, that same cheesy line over and over again. And this wasn't like that. Sure, the guy's hot and buff and whatever, but he's also just a regular dude. And so I liked that a lot more. It made me nostalgic for those close female friendships. And I do think a little bit it is about aging and kind of letting go of those more codependent relationships that you have and learning that you have to live life for yourself and find what makes you happy and be happy being you. And I just thought it was a really cute story, honestly. So I was actually very surprised by this one. This is one of the books in the romance genre that I actually will go out and read more of her books. And yeah, I thought it was cute. I thought it had a great meaning behind it, and it was more than just doing it, which I appreciate. Anyways, those are the books that I read in June, folks. We are all caught up. I will have my July wrap up at the end of July, but other than that, we're off to some other videos. So yeah, let me know what you guys have been reading recently. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon with another horror video. Okay, bye!